detectors were reading, they were off the scale. They were activated in moments after putting them in those houses. Those houses had such high level of carbon monoxide.
The night that my father collapsed, one of the things he said was like he was falling asleep in front of the TV, and he just thought he was tired. He collapsed and fell out of bed, and they went in and they couldn't wake him up.
They had to take him to the hospital. Could have died if nobody had happened to find him in time, you know, and it was one of a number of scary incidents that started placing additional pressure on government. The biggest and scariest incident of all involved a 12-year-old boy by the name of Todd Domboski.
I seen smoke, so I went over to see if it was the mine fire, and when I did, I just fell right through.
We were over at the gas station when Todd Domboski ran over to us. He was covered in mud, and he was screaming, and he said, "Help, help, help, my grandmother's yard fell in."
Luckily for him, he had like an orange hunting hat on, and his cousin, from what I understand, crawled over on like his, almost on his belly like a snake, and saw the orange hunting hat and just reached in and grabbed him and pulled him out.
They administered oxygen. They rushed me to the hospital for some blood gas tests. I was just covered in mud. From the intense heat, I had heavy pants, heavy shirt, a heavy coat. It was baked on. I mean, you couldn't go to a car wash and blast me off. It was just baked on.
If he did not hold on to those, he would have slid down the gangway or down the slope, which was about 300 feet in depth. And if I recall, the temperatures recorded were anywhere from 400 to 600 degrees at the bottom of the hole.
Todd Domboski's falling into the subsidence, it was such a shocking incident that government could no longer ignore the Centralia mine fire, problem. A 12-year-old boy dropping out of sight into a subsidence that was filled with deadly gases. I mean, you can't get any more of a wake-up call than that.
I don't know how many times I heard it said that unfortunately somebody was going to have to die before the government would do something about this. And then some did die.
Emergency housing for 6 families moving into town. Red ribbons warning of the fuming fire in the mines below. State inspectors walking door to door to measure deadly fumes. Those were the sights that greeted Governor Thornburg when he came to Centralia. At the fire hall, hundreds of townspeople greeted him as well to learn of a first step towards solving their mine fire problem.
No one, whether for financial or personal reasons, was forced to sell their properties or move out of their homes.
There was a conflict, I think, in people's minds about whether the right thing to do was to leave, and so people were asking money to leave, or whether the right thing to do was to solve the problem, and people were asking money to solve the problem.
There was a lot of tension, a lot of fighting between neighbors, friends, even family. People. You had people that wanted to stay and people that wanted to move, and it caused quite a lot of problems.
George and Mary Ellen Lokitis hope to get a fair buyout for their home from the government. But with an air monitor in their living room, they have another reason to be happy about relocation being one step closer. That's the health of their children, and the Lokitises want to move.
Now we do. We just had a trip with the doctor with the young lad today. It's chronic bronchitis, upper respiratory infections.
Well, my grandfather, myself, and my parents were all adamant about staying. Unfortunately, my uncle and his family left. They moved to a neighboring town. That was kind of upsetting. It would have been nice if everyone stayed. And they lived right over on the next block over here on Locust Avenue. I could basically walk out my back gate, walk over the alley, and walk right into their backyard. They were, everyone was so close within distance. And I mean, obviously right there you can see 20 years later, not a problem. They were in the middle of that block. Their neighbors were deciding to leave. They were afraid of having, empty houses beside them, fire hazard and all the other problems that could arise from that kind of a situation. I guess they just thought it would be best for them to leave. I wish they would have stayed, but it was, for everyone to make up their own mind.
There was a small group of people who were very opposed to a general relocation. They wanted something simple done to stop the fire, and they did not want to leave. They would often say, we don't want the town torn apart. But unfortunately, there weren't many options. There, they could either, relocate the people of Centralia, or they could dig a big trench down the middle of Centralia, which is going to require doing the same thing anyway.
The people who wanted to move and wanted to move for the safety of their family were almost cast as the bad guys, the demons in the town, by these individuals who didn't want to move.
Oh, I got death threats. We became very vocal, and some of the people in town didn't like the fact that we were so vocal. We didn't want someone to die before action was taken on that fire. And the potential was there for someone to die. It was very definitely there.
We knew it was something that had to be done. We knew something had to change. I think there were about 1,100 people living there at the time. 500 families, I believe, was a figure. And it was getting worse every year. The fire was expanding, and there was no chance of getting the fire under control. So working with the state and the administration, we decided that what we'd try to do is buy the town.
They said it was an issue of money. All the studies they've done and the research, they figured it would be more cost efficient just to totally relocate all the people than to find a solution to put the
$42 million was the amount that Congress eventually appropriated, and that was considerably less than the trenching options. The complete trenching option would have been like $650 million, somewhere in that area, and some of the lesser trenches, they were still talking, 100, 200 million, somewhere in there. So they saved a lot of money by relocation.